Hi, my name is Kate Lehman, and today we're going to talk about internet safety. After the presentation, feel free to leave any comments in the discussion board or questions, and I'll try and get back to you with an answer as soon as possible. So let's get started. We're going to talk about internet safety. Usually when you think about internet safety and children getting in trouble on the internet, you think about high schoolers and middle school students who have gotten in trouble through social media or who have met up with friends they didn't know. So today we're going to talk about internet safety in the elementary classroom and how we can keep our younger students safe. And hopefully, if we can keep our younger students safe, it'll help us in the future so that the next generation will also, as students grow up, they'll understand how to use the internet. So we're going to talk about how we can protect our students when it comes to the internet. Who is responsible for keeping students safe on the internet? Should it be parents, or should it be teachers, or should it be both of them, or do we just let students search for themselves? Do we give them a computer and say, good luck? Then lastly, we'll discuss what types of dangers that students are actually facing on the internet and what we can do as parents and teachers and to help prevent them. First off, how can we protect our students and children? The big thing with this is knowledge is power. The more our students know, the safer they can and will be on the internet. Students need to understand that there's so many different ways they can get in trouble, and a big one is social media, but they also need to know that they can get in trouble through downloading music illegally, copying homework, all sorts of things. Um, Today's youth need to be aware that what they post can be virtually found by just about anyone. This includes sex offenders, future employees, families, friends. A lot of times students will post things without even thinking of the consequences they could have in the future. Um, a lot of times we don't have elementary students posting about themselves or stuff, but they need to be aware that when they do start getting on Facebooks or MySpaces or Twitters, that anything they do post can be found by people that are in the future going to employ them. And teachers or employees can go back and look at stuff from 15, 20 years ago on your Facebook, and if they see stuff they don't like, you might not get hired because of it. Beware what you share is a really big thing we need to teach our students in the elementary classrooms. Like I said, they're not going to be sharing a whole lot, but they will be eventually, and that's when they need to realize, hey, this is something I shouldn't be sharing. Um, Knowing all the risks on the internet leads to the question, what age should we start teaching students about the internet? This is pretty controversial when it comes to like kindergarten kids or elementary kids because you don't have a whole lot of kindergartners, first, second graders on the computer just because they don't really have the smarts to use them yet. They have trouble reading still. They don't really know where to click. Um, so one survey conducted says that the average age a student should start is 7.2, and that's just like the average. The survey interviewed teachers, clinicians, parents, and adolescents, and the results are actually pretty interesting. The teachers reported that the average starting age should be 6.9. Um, the clinicians said that it should be 7.3. Parents think that it should begin the earliest at 6.6. I thought that was pretty interesting. And then students themselves think that they should begin at 8.7 years old. So I thought it was interesting that there's almost a 2-year difference between when parents thought students should start learning and when students thought they should start learning. So that was interesting. Next, whose job is it to keep children safe on the internet? Should it fall on the shoulders of parents, teachers, or should students be responsible for figuring out themselves? I think we can all pretty much agree on the fact that students should not be responsible for figuring it out themselves. They need to have definitely some parental, some teacher guidance, because if you give a student a laptop or an iPad or Kindle and say, hey, have this, good luck, they're going to get in trouble. It's going to happen. A lot of people argue that the library media specialist seems like a good idea for internet safety just because there's always computers in the library, and usually a media specialist knows how to run them pretty well. But it's probably going to end up falling on the shoulders of teachers, because usually library time is very limited for kids. If they're lucky, they'll get to go once or twice a week. And librarians are going to want to spend time doing things that have to do with the library. So they're going to want to use card catalogs, books. They're going to try and get students interested in the reading aspect more than the internet aspect. So it seems like a good idea to have them teach it, but unless you schedule time, like specific time that's not library time, it's going to be tough to get your library and media specialist on board. Kindergarten and first grade lessons should focus on the internet as communication devices. It should be emphasized that students and children should always have an adult with them or near them when they are online. Like I said earlier, a lot of times you don't have students on the internet quite at this age, but there will be some students that get on iPads to play games or Kindles, and this is kind of what we need to teach our students when they are getting on the internet. So like I said, those lessons should focus on the internet as a communication device. At the second grade level, the property of others should be discussed. Students are expected to take care of their computers. It should also be explained that private information includes names, addresses, and phone numbers, and that they should not be shared online. A lot of times if you tell a second grader, hey, don't share your private information, they don't think about their name being something private. They think, hey, that's pretty, everyone knows my name. It's okay for people to know my name, and if they know my address, no big deal. So we need to explain to our students that by giving this out, they put themselves in a lot of risk and danger. Property also needs to be discussed just because this is at the age when students start getting their own belongings, and they need to understand that it's theirs to take care of. In the third grade, the definition of private information should be reviewed. So this is again go over names, addresses, telephone numbers, and how not to give that stuff out to just the general public. This is also a good age to start learning about emails and how to show good manners online. This doesn't mean that in third grade you should have your students get email addresses just because they're not going to need them. They don't really have anyone to communicate with through email, but they'll have seen their parents using them, they'll have seen their teachers using them, and they're not going to understand them. So they need to know what they are and how they can be used. Like I said, that doesn't mean you give them an internet or an email address. It just means explain how the email works. Next, what types of dangers are students facing on the internet and how can we prevent them? There's a lot. Cyberbullying is a huge one, especially at this age level, and that includes teasing, gossiping, rumors, students getting insulted, threats, name-calling, lies, harassment, and mean words. Cyberbullying is just such a huge thing, and that starts at the earliest. That's probably one of the biggest dangers students will get themselves in at the earliest age. So we need to teach them how to keep away from cyberbullying and how to not be a cyberbully. And we need to make sure that our students know that just because they're typing something mean, they're still saying it, and it's still hurting someone's feelings. One of the big problems that children are getting in trouble is because of iPads and tablets and Kindles, things like that. It is reported that the use of handheld devices like iPads by children under the age of 15 has nearly tripled in the past year. This has to do a lot with just they're getting more popular. Apple's coming out with a lot of new things that focus directly to kids. There's a lot more apps now that you can get that are learning apps, and so parents feel comfortable downloading those, but then the student has the iPad in their hands, and they're just going to get in trouble if we don't teach them how to work them. Children aged 12 to 15, so this is getting into the older, middle school, going into high school age level, have never met close to a third of their friends on social networking sites. This is something that leaves children widely open to cyberbullying and stalking. It's important that we stress to our students never to add anyone on social media sites that they don't know. If they get friend requests on Twitter, MySpace, Facebook, any of those social media sites, they need to make sure that they know the person who they're requesting to be their friends with. And if they don't, they shouldn't add them. And if they have questions about if they should add someone, they should always come to an adult first. A big thing that parents can do to help prevent this stuff is installing hardware and software firewalls. It is also important to install antiviruses, perform frequent backups on your computer, and disable file sharing. Install OS and web browser securities. This is just important so that we don't have ads popping up. A lot of times an ad will pop up with maybe an inappropriate picture or something, and then if a student clicks it, they'll go to websites that you definitely do not want them to be on. So install your firewalls, install your antiviruses. It'll get you a long ways. Lastly, on this part, there's a campaign called Smart Online, Safe Online. It is a federally funded website, and it teaches adults how to talk to students about internet safety. It says that one of the best ways to talk to students is to talk like students. So it could be something like saying, inform students that someone is claiming to be a cool teenager might actually be a 40-year-old creep. Using words like creep and stalker is going to get you a lot farther than saying, this old man might not be who you think it is. They'll be like, might not, but probably is. But when you say words like creep, stalker, weirdo, it's going to make students really listen to you and think, oh wow, they are kind of on my level. They know what they're talking about. I should really listen to my parent or my teacher because they have my best interest in mind. So when you're talking to your students or your children, try and talk like them, not at them. That way it'll be more of a conversation-like topic than it will be, I'm telling you, you can't do this. And you'll get a lot farther with students and children. In conclusion, it really doesn't matter who teaches internet safety as long as it's being taught. Teachers can take the time to teach it, but they will only be able to do so much. You can teach your students as much as you want about internet safety, but if it's not enforced at home, it's just not going to go very far. You can tell your students, hey, don't do this, don't get on these sites, only add friends, but if parents are giving free range to students, they're still going to do it just because they can. So as a teacher, it's probably our job to give as much information to students as we can, but it's up to the parents to set and enforce the rules. They need to put parental guides on their iPads, Kindles, TVs, computers. It's going to be a team effort. It can't just fall on either a teacher or a parent. Younger students who are allowed to play with handheld devices unsupervised will probably manage to get themselves in trouble, especially if they're allowed on an open network with no parental blocks or settings or anything. This is just how it's going to be. There's so many things that can pop up that they can click on. They can go from site to site to site with no problem. We really need to make sure that we're monitoring what our students are doing on the internet. Finally, the teaching of internet safety can start at any age. Even if students are too young to use the internet, it does not hurt them to be informed about the risks on the web. If students are informed on the internet, it can be an awesome tool, and we can tell our students this, hey, if you know what you're doing, this can be a great resource for you. But when they're not informed, don't know how to use the internet or what the risks are, it'll end up being the exact opposite, and it will have a very detrimental effect. We'll see students who are just getting in trouble instead of using the internet how they're supposed to use it. They'll be on social media all day instead of using it to do research. It can be a really good thing or a really bad thing depending on how we teach our students. Overall, internet safety is just a pretty huge deal. It's on everyone's shoulders to teach it, and we need to make sure that our students are informed. That's about all I've got. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll try and answer them in a timely fashion. Thank you.